The elevator doors slid open with their usual whisper, but Natasha's world shattered in complete silence. There, in her own penthouse living room, sat her husband Adrian with his 25-year-old assistant Bethany curled against him on the white leather couch she had personally selected. Their voices drifted across the marble floors, and every word felt like a knife twisting deeper into her chest. "She's getting suspicious," Bethany whispered, running her perfectly manicured fingers through Adrian's graying hair. "The way she looked at me during yesterday's board meeting." Adrian's laugh was cold, nothing like the man Natasha had fallen in love with 15 years ago. "Natasha's too proud to admit what she already knows. She built this empire thinking she was untouchable, but she's about to learn how quickly things can change." Natasha pressed herself against the wall beside the elevator, her breathing shallow and controlled. She had returned early from her business trip to London, wanting to surprise the man she thought loved her. Instead, she was witnessing her own execution. "When will you tell her?" Bethany asked, her voice carrying that sweet innocence that had fooled everyone at Sterling Luxury Holdings. Everyone except Natasha, who had always sensed something calculating behind those wide brown eyes. "Soon. Once the new contracts are signed and the European expansion is complete, I won't need her connections anymore. You'll be the new Mrs. Sterling and she'll be yesterday's news." Adrian's fingers traced patterns on Bethany's bare shoulder. "The business will be mine completely. She can take whatever settlement the lawyers give her and disappear." Natasha's hands trembled as she realized the true scope of their betrayal. This wasn't just about adultery. They were planning to steal everything she had built, everything she had sacrificed for. The late nights, the missed family gatherings, the years she had poured into making Sterling Luxury Holdings the most prestigious company in their industry. What about her shares in the company? Bethany's question made Natasha's blood run cold. "Legally, she owns 60%, but that's just paperwork. I've been running this company for years. When we divorce, I'll make sure she understands that fighting me in court would destroy everything she claims to care about. She'll take a reasonable settlement and walk away quietly." Natasha's always been practical about business. The word practical echoed in Natasha's mind as she watched the man she had trusted with everything plot her downfall. Practical. Yes, she had been practical when she invested her inheritance to start their company. Practical when she worked 18-hour days to build their client base. Practical when she stepped back from day-to-day operations to let Adrian shine as the public face of their success. But Adrian had made one critical error in his assessment. Natasha wasn't just practical about business, she was brilliant at it. "I love you," Bethany whispered against Adrian's lips, and Natasha felt something cold and calculating settle in her chest where her heart used to be. "I love you too, baby. Just a few more weeks and we'll have everything we want." Natasha stepped back into the elevator and pressed the button for the parking garage. As the doors closed, she caught one last glimpse of her husband and his replacement laughing together on furniture she had bought, in a home she had made, celebrating the destruction of a life she had built. The elevator descended, and with each floor, Natasha felt her shock transform into something far more dangerous. They thought they knew her. They thought she was some naive wife who would crumble at the first sign of betrayal. They had no idea that the woman who had built a luxury empire from nothing was still very much alive beneath the perfect wife facade. By the time the elevator reached the parking garage, Natasha Sterling was no longer the woman who had entered that penthouse. She was the CEO who had closed million-dollar deals, the strategist who had outmaneuvered competitors across 3 continents, the visionary who had turned a small investment into a global empire. Adrian wanted to play games with her company? Her life? Her future? He was about to learn that Natasha Sterling had never lost a business battle in her life, and she wasn't about to start now. She slid into her black Mercedes, her hands steady on the steering wheel as she pulled out of the garage. In her rearview mirror, the Sterling Luxury Holdings building rose into the night sky, its windows glowing like golden eyes. Soon, Adrian would learn exactly what 60% ownership really meant. And this time being practical meant war. Natasha sat in her corner office the next morning, her face a perfect mask of professional calm as employees streamed past her glass walls. Everyone who looked in saw the same composed executive they had always known, but inside, her mind worked with the precision of a master chess player mapping out every possible move. Adrian breezed into her office at 10:15, his usual confident smile in place as he leaned down to kiss her cheek. The casual gesture that had once made her heart flutter now made her skin crawl, but she forced herself to return his smile. "How was London?" he asked, settling into the chair across from her mahogany desk. "Productive. The Harrods deal is moving forward." Her voice remained steady, betraying nothing of the storm raging beneath the surface. How were things here? Smooth as always. Bethany handled the Peterson account beautifully while you were away. The way he said the younger woman's name, with just a hint of fondness, confirmed everything Natasha had witnessed the night before. She's quite capable, Natasha agreed, her fingers dancing across her keyboard as she pulled up financial reports. Actually, I've been thinking about expanding her responsibilities. Adrian's eyes lit up with interest. Really? What did you have in mind? Oh, just some additional oversight on the European accounts. Nothing major. Natasha kept her tone casual while her fingers found the voice recording app on her phone, hidden beneath a stack of contracts. From now on, every conversation would be documented. After Adrian left for his lunch meeting, probably with Bethany, Natasha realized she locked her office door and began the real work. Years of building Sterling Luxury Holdings had taught her that information was the most valuable currency in business, and she intended to be very wealthy in that regard. Her first call was to Michael Patterson, the private investigator she had used for corporate due diligence in the past. His voice was warm with recognition when he answered. Mrs. Sterling, what can I do for you? I need a complete background check on someone, and I need it done quietly. Very quietly. Of course. Who are we looking into? Bethany Rodriguez. She's currently employed as an executive assistant at my company. Natasha's voice hardened. I want to know everything. Her employment history, her financial situation, her personal relationships. Everything. I'll have preliminary information for you by tomorrow morning. Should I send it to your usual email? No. Create a new secure email account and send me the credentials. This needs to stay completely off any company systems. After hanging up with Michael, Natasha opened her laptop and began a more delicate task. As a co-founder of Sterling Luxury Holdings, she had access to every financial system, every contract, every legal document that kept their empire running. What she discovered in the next 3 hours made her earlier anger seem quaint by comparison. Adrian had been preparing for this moment longer than she had realized. Over the past 6 months, he had quietly moved several major accounts into his personal management, claiming it was to streamline operations. He had also been subtly restructuring their corporate hierarchy, positioning himself as the sole decision-maker on key initiatives. But his most damaging move was the one he probably thought was the most clever. Adrian had been meeting with their biggest investors, painting Natasha as a silent partner who was ready to step back from active management. He was laying the groundwork to convince everyone that her eventual departure would be seamless and beneficial for the company. What Adrian had forgotten, in his arrogance, was that Natasha still had access to everything. Every email he had sent, every document he had signed, every meeting he had scheduled was logged in systems she had personally designed. His preparation for her destruction had created the perfect evidence trail for his downfall. Her phone buzzed with a text from Adrian. Working late tonight. Don't wait up. Natasha smiled grimly as she typed back. Of course, darling. I'll probably be working late myself. She would indeed be working late, but not on anything Adrian could imagine. Her next call was to Jennifer Walsh, the corporate attorney who had handled their most sensitive legal matters for years. Jennifer, I need to see you tomorrow. Early and not at your office. Is everything all right, Natasha? Everything is about to be very different. Can you meet me at the Ritz-Carlton at 7 a.m.? And Jennifer? Bring everything you have on the corporate structure of Sterling Luxury Holdings. Every document, every filing, every piece of paper that establishes ownership and control. Of course. Should I ask what this is about? Tomorrow morning you'll understand everything. As the sun set over the city, Natasha remained in her office, methodically building the foundation of her counterattack. She printed financial reports, copied important files to encrypted drives, and began reaching out to business contacts who had known her long before Adrian Sterling entered her life. Her marriage was over. She had accepted that truth with the same practical efficiency she brought to every business decision. But Adrian's mistake was thinking that destroying her personally would give him control over what she had built professionally. He was about to learn that Natasha Sterling had never confused love with business. And in business she had never accepted defeat. By midnight she had what she needed to begin her war. Tomorrow she would start calling in favors from people who remembered when she was the rising star of the luxury goods industry, long before she became Mrs. Adrian Sterling. The game was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. Natasha arrived at the Ritz-Carlton at 6:50 a.m., her black suit immaculate and her mind sharp as a blade. Jennifer Walsh was already seated in a private corner of the restaurant, 3 leather briefcases arranged beside her chair like artillery. "You look like you haven't slept," Jennifer observed as Natasha sat down. "I haven't. But I've learned more in the past 24 hours than I have in the past 2 years." Natasha ordered black coffee and leaned forward. "Jennifer, I need you to remind me of something. When Adrian and I founded Sterling Luxury Holdings, what was the exact ownership structure?" Jennifer opened the first briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. "You provided the initial capital investment of $12 million from your family inheritance. Adrian contributed his marketing expertise and industry connections, but no monetary investment. The ownership was structured as 60% you, 40% him. And that structure has never changed?" "Never. In fact, when you expanded into European markets 3 years ago, you provided an additional $8 million in funding, which should have increased your percentage, but you chose to maintain the original 60-40 split." Natasha nodded, memories flooding back of sleepless nights spent developing their first luxury handbag line. She had been 28 then, hungry and determined to prove that her business degree from Wharton wasn't just expensive paper. Adrian had been the charismatic marketing director at a competitor company, full of grand plans and silver-tongued promises. "Tell me about the patents," Natasha continued. Jennifer flipped through pages of legal documents. "You hold the patents on the specialized leather treatment process that gives Sterling products their distinctive finish. You also own the trademarks for the Sterling signature design elements. Those were registered in your name only 2 years before you even met Adrian." The leather treatment process. Natasha almost laughed at the irony. She had developed that innovation during her MBA program, spending months in a chemistry lab perfecting a process that made leather more durable while maintaining luxury softness. That single innovation had set Sterling Luxury Holdings apart from every competitor in the industry. "What about the manufacturing contracts?" "Most of them are structured through your European subsidiary, which you established using your personal connections in Italy and France. The subsidiary is wholly owned by you, not by Sterling Luxury Holdings." Natasha felt pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. Adrian might run the day-to-day operations, but the foundation of their empire belonged to her. The patents, the manufacturing relationships, the specialized processes, all of it traced back to her innovations and investments. "Jennifer, I need you to do something for me, and I need it done immediately." "What do you need?" "I want a complete audit of all our corporate structures. Every subsidiary, every contract, every legal arrangement that gives us our competitive advantage. I want to know exactly what happens to Sterling Luxury Holdings if I decide to withdraw my assets." Jennifer's eyes widened with understanding. "Natasha, are you considering dissolving the partnership?" "I'm considering protecting what's mine." Natasha's voice carried the same steel that had intimidated boardrooms full of executives twice her age. "How long will the audit take?" "For a complete analysis? 3 days, working around the clock." "Do it. Spare no expense. I want to know every legal option available to me." After Jennifer left, Natasha drove to her favorite coffee shop in Georgetown, a place she had discovered during her early days building the company. She needed to think, and she needed to remember who she had been before she became half of a couple. Her phone rang as she settled into a corner table. The caller ID showed a number she hadn't seen in 3 years. "Natasha Sterling?" The voice was warm with Italian accent. "Roberto. How wonderful to hear from you." Roberto Martinelli had been her first manufacturing partner, a third-generation leather craftsman whose family workshops in Tuscany had produced some of the world's finest luxury goods. He had taken a chance on her when she was nobody, trusting her vision and her innovative processes when established brands wouldn't return her phone calls. "I am in Washington for a trade conference," Roberto continued. "Perhaps we could have dinner? There are some opportunities one would like to discuss with you." "I would love that. Are you free tonight?" As she hung up, Natasha realized that her network was still intact. Adrian might control Sterling Luxury Holdings' current operations, but the relationships she had built over 15 years belonged to her alone. Her laptop chimed with a new email from the secure account Michael Patterson had created. The private investigator worked fast. Bethany Rodriguez, she learned, had a pattern. 3 previous jobs as an executive assistant, all ending when the companies discovered she was having affairs with married executives. Her financial records showed expensive tastes funded by generous gifts from older, wealthy men. But the most interesting detail was a series of text messages Michael had legally obtained. Messages between Bethany and a friend, dated just 2 weeks ago. "The old man is completely hooked. Once I get him to marry me, I'll be set for life." "What about his wife?" "Please. She's been out of the business game for years. Adrian says she's basically retired. She won't be a problem. Natasha closed the laptop and smiled for the first time in 24 hours. Bethany had made the same mistake as Adrian, underestimating exactly who Natasha Sterling was and what she was capable of achieving. Tonight, she would have dinner with Roberto and begin rebuilding the empire that bore her innovations. Tomorrow she would start the systematic deconstruction of everything Adrian thought he controlled. The foundation was stronger than either of them realized. Now it was time to show them what happened when someone tried to steal from a woman who had built everything from the ground up. Roberto's eyes lit up as Natasha walked into Lou Bernardine, her burgundy dress commanding attention from every corner of the restaurant. He stood to embrace her, his weathered hands gentle on her shoulders. "Natasha, you look magnificent. Success agrees with you." "Thank you, Roberto. You look well yourself." She settled into the chair across from him, noting how his respect felt genuine compared to the performance she had grown accustomed to at home. "I must confess, I have been following Sterling Luxury Holdings in the trade publications. Your expansion into Asian markets was brilliant." Roberto poured wine from a bottle that probably cost more than most people made in a week. "But I sense you did not ask me to dinner simply for old times." Natasha had always appreciated Roberto's directness. In a world of corporate doublespeak, he remained refreshingly honest. "You're right. I want to discuss something confidential with you." She leaned forward, her voice dropping. "What would you say if I told you I was considering starting a new venture? Something completely separate from Sterling Luxury Holdings?" Roberto's eyebrows rose with interest. "I would say that Natasha Sterling has never started anything that did not become extraordinary." "What type of venture?" "Ultra-luxury goods. Limited production, exclusive clientele. The kind of pieces that become family heirlooms." Natasha's vision crystallized as she spoke. "I've been developing some new processes in my private workshop. Innovations that could revolutionize how luxury leather goods are produced." "And you would want to partner with Martinelli Crafters?" "I would want you to be the exclusive manufacturer for the European and North American markets. Full production capacity, premium pricing, and a 5-year exclusive contract." Roberto set down his wine glass, his business instincts fully engaged. "This would be independent of Sterling Luxury Holdings?" "Completely independent. This would be my company, my designs, my processes." Natasha pulled out her phone and showed him photos from her private workshop, a space Adrian didn't even know existed. "I've been working on these innovations for 2 years. They're ready for production." The photos showed leather goods that looked like works of art. Handbags with intricate patterns that seemed to shift in the light, briefcases with surfaces that felt like silk but wore like steel, accessories that combined traditional craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. "Madonna mia," Roberto whispered. "These are incredible. The finish, the details, how did you achieve this?" "Trade secrets," Natasha smiled. "But I can tell you that no one else in the industry can replicate this process. It's completely proprietary." Roberto was quiet for several minutes, studying the photos with the intensity of a master craftsman evaluating a new technique. Finally he looked up. "When do we start?" "Soon. Very soon." Natasha raised her wine glass. "To new beginnings." The next morning, Natasha arrived at Sterling Luxury Holdings with a renewed sense of purpose. She had 3 more calls to make before lunch, and each one would strengthen the foundation of her future empire. Her first call was to Catherine Liu, a former business school classmate who now ran one of the most exclusive boutique chains in Asia. "Natasha, what a lovely surprise. How are things in Washington?" "Busy as always. Catherine, I have an interesting proposition for you. Would you be interested in exclusive retail rights for a new ultra-luxury line? Something completely unique. From Sterling Luxury Holdings?" "From me personally. A new venture I'm launching." The conversation that followed lasted an hour, ending with Catherine's enthusiastic agreement to provide retail locations across 12 major Asian cities. Her second call was to James Morrison, a venture capitalist who had tried to invest in Sterling Luxury Holdings 3 years earlier. Adrian had turned him down, preferring to maintain control, but Natasha remembered James's strategic insights. "James, it's Natasha Sterling. Do you have a few minutes to discuss a potential investment opportunity?" "For you? I have all day. What are you thinking?" "A new luxury goods company. Revolutionary production methods, established manufacturing partnerships, and confirmed retail distribution. I'm looking for a strategic partner who understands the high-end market." "How much are we talking about?" $50 million initial investment. Projected revenue of $200 million in the first 3 years. James's sharp intake of breath told her everything she needed to know. Natasha, I'm very interested. Can we meet this week? Her third call was the most satisfying. Margaret Westbrook had been Sterling Luxury Holdings' biggest client before Adrian decided her account was too demanding and quietly encouraged her to shop elsewhere. Margaret owned hotels, restaurants, and retail chains across North America, and she had always preferred working with Natasha directly. Margaret, it's Natasha Sterling. I hope you're well. Natasha, darling. I was just thinking about you. The leather goods we got from Sterling 3 years ago are still the most beautiful pieces in my hotels. Guests are constantly asking where they can purchase similar items. What would you say if I told you that you could have exclusive access to something even more beautiful? A new line I'm developing personally. The enthusiasm in Margaret's voice was infectious. I would say that you need to come to my office immediately and show me everything. By the time Adrian arrived at the office for their weekly strategy meeting, Natasha had commitments for manufacturing, investment, and retail distribution worth over $300 million. All for a company that didn't officially exist yet. Adrian breezed into her office, his confidence unshaken. Ready for our meeting? I have some exciting updates about the Peterson account. Of course, Natasha smiled, her recording app already running. I'm always interested in hearing your updates. As Adrian launched into his presentation about client relationships and market expansion, Natasha found herself studying him with new eyes. He was still handsome, still charismatic, still capable of selling anyone on his vision. But underneath the polished exterior, she now saw the calculating manipulator who was planning to steal her life's work. You're quiet today, Adrian observed. Everything all right? Just thinking about the future, Natasha replied. About new opportunities and changes ahead. Adrian smiled, probably thinking she was referring to whatever narrative he and Bethany had constructed about their future together. He had no idea that while he was planning her demise, she was building the foundation for his downfall. The network was in place. The capital was committed. The production capacity was secured. Now it was time to execute the most important business decision of her life, the complete destruction of Adrian Sterling's comfortable world. Jennifer Walsh looked exhausted when she arrived at Natasha's private workshop at 7 a.m. on Friday morning. She carried 4 briefcases and had the determined expression of someone who had spent 3 days uncovering corporate secrets. I have everything, Jennifer announced, setting the briefcases on Natasha's workbench between prototypes of luxury handbags. And Natasha, what I found is going to change everything. Natasha poured coffee from the machine she had installed in her workshop space, a converted warehouse in Alexandria that Adrian had no idea existed. This was where she had developed her revolutionary leather treatments, where she had designed the innovations that would power her new empire. Show me, Natasha said, settling into a leather chair she had crafted herself. Jennifer opened the first briefcase and spread documents across the polished wooden table. Let's start with the good news. Your ownership position is even stronger than we thought. When Sterling Luxury Holdings expanded into South American markets, you provided the additional funding through your personal trust, not through the company. That created a subsidiary that is wholly owned by you. What does that mean practically? It means you own 100% of Sterling South America, which handles approximately 40% of the company's total revenue. Jennifer pulled out a financial chart. If you withdraw Sterling South America from the parent company, Sterling Luxury Holdings loses its largest profit center. Natasha felt a surge of satisfaction. What else? The patents are the real nuclear weapon, Jennifer continued. Your leather treatment process isn't just used in Sterling products, you licensed it to 3 other luxury manufacturers. Those licensing fees go directly to you, not to Sterling Luxury Holdings. If you terminate those licenses and grant exclusive rights to a new company, every luxury handbag manufacturer in the world would need to work with me or develop inferior products, Natasha finished. Exactly. And there's more. Your manufacturing contracts in Italy, France, and Switzerland are all personal agreements with you, not corporate contracts. If you leave, those relationships go with you. Jennifer opened the second briefcase, revealing accounting records and financial statements. Now for the really interesting part. I had our forensic accountants examine Adrian's recent activities. What did you find? He's been moving money. Small amounts, always under the reporting thresholds, but consistently. Over the past year, he's transferred approximately $2 million from Sterling Luxury Holdings accounts into personal investments. Natasha's jaw tightened. Is that legal? Technically, as a 40% owner and acting CEO, he has the authority to make those transfers. But ethically and practically, he's been enriching himself while planning to push out the majority shareholder. Jennifer pulled out printed emails. And these confirm his intentions. The emails were between Adrian and a corporate headhunter, discussing his plans to restructure the company leadership and transition to a new ownership model. The most damning email was dated just 1 week ago. The current majority shareholder is planning to reduce her involvement in day-to-day operations. This presents an opportunity for a dynamic leader to acquire additional equity and take full control of a growing luxury brand. He's been shopping for investors to buy out my shares, Natasha realized. Probably at below market value, claiming I want to retire. That's not the worst part, Jennifer said grimly. Look at this. The final email made Natasha's blood boil. Adrian was scheduled to meet next week with Harrison Capital, a private equity firm known for hostile takeovers. The meeting agenda included strategies for minority shareholder buyouts and restructuring options for family-owned luxury brands. He's planning a coup, Natasha whispered. A very sophisticated one. If he can convince Harrison Capital to buy a majority stake, they could force you out entirely. You would receive fair market value for your shares, but you would lose control of the company you built. Natasha stood up and walked to the windows overlooking the Potomac River. In the distance, she could see the Washington Monument rising like a spear into the morning sky. She had built her life in this city, created her fortune through discipline and innovation. Adrian thought he could simply take it all away. Jennifer, I want you to prepare 3 sets of legal documents. What kind of documents? First, I want to formally withdraw Sterling South America from Sterling Luxury Holdings. Create a new parent company called NS Luxury Holdings. Natasha's voice grew stronger with each word. Second, I want to terminate all manufacturing contracts between Sterling Luxury Holdings and my personal partners. Those relationships will be transferred to NS Luxury Holdings. And the third set? Divorce papers. I want Adrian served on the same day he loses 40% of his company's revenue. Jennifer was quiet for a moment, then opened her laptop. This is going to be a corporate earthquake. Sterling Luxury Holdings will lose its South American operations, its manufacturing capacity, and its proprietary processes all at once. That's the point. Adrian wants to play games with my business? He's about to learn that I don't play games. I win. Over the next 6 hours, they worked through every legal detail of Natasha's exit strategy. By the time Jennifer left that afternoon, they had a comprehensive plan that would systematically dismantle Adrian's empire while protecting Natasha's interests. That evening, Natasha sat in her workshop, surrounded by prototypes of her new luxury line. Her phone showed 17 missed calls from Adrian, who was apparently working late again with Bethany. She deleted the calls without listening to the voicemails. Her laptop chimed with a message from Michael Patterson, the private investigator. Mrs. Sterling, you asked me to monitor your husband's activities. He just booked a weekend trip to Napa Valley for 2 people. The reservation is under Mr. and Mrs. Sterling, but according to my sources, he won't be traveling with you. Natasha smiled grimly. Adrian was taking his mistress on a romantic getaway using the name that belonged to his wife. The arrogance was breathtaking. But his timing was perfect. While Adrian was playing house with Bethany in wine country, Natasha would be putting the final pieces of her plan into motion. Monday morning was going to be very educational for Mr. Adrian Sterling. Monday morning arrived with unseasonable clarity, the kind of crisp autumn day that made Washington look like a postcard. Natasha stood in her corner office, watching employees arrive for work, unaware that their company was about to change forever. She wore her favorite black suit, the one she had bought to celebrate Sterling Luxury Holdings' first $1 million quarter, and she felt like a general preparing for the decisive battle. Adrian stumbled into the office at 10:30, still glowing from his weekend in Napa Valley. His skin had the relaxed flush of someone who had spent 2 days drinking expensive wine and celebrating a future he thought was secured. He kissed Natasha's cheek with the casual confidence of a man who believed he held all the cards. "How was your weekend?" he asked, settling into the chair across from her desk. "Productive," Natasha replied, her voice steady. "I had time to think about a lot of things. About our future, about the company, about where we want to go from here." "That's great. I actually wanted to talk to you about some new opportunities. Harrison Capital has been asking about potential partnerships." Adrian launched into his prepared speech about growth strategies and market expansion, the same silver-tongued presentation that had charmed investors for years. But Natasha was no longer listening to his words. She was studying his face, memorizing the confident expression that was about to disappear forever. "Adrian," she interrupted quietly. "We need to talk." Something in her tone made him pause. "What's on your mind?" Natasha reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a manila folder. Inside were photographs that Michael Patterson had provided, images of Adrian and Bethany at various restaurants, hotels, and finally, their romantic weekend in wine country. She spread the photos across her desk like playing cards. Adrian's face went completely white. "I know about Bethany," Natasha said simply. "I know about your plans to force me out of the company. I know about your meetings with Harrison Capital, your secret bank transfers, and your little scheme to steal my life's work." Adrian's mouth opened and closed without sound. For perhaps the first time in his adult life he was completely speechless. "Here's what's going to happen," Natasha continued, her voice gaining strength. "You're going to listen very carefully, because your future depends on understanding every word I say." She opened her laptop and turned the screen toward him. The display showed legal documents with official letterhead and multiple signatures. "As of this morning, I have formally withdrawn Sterling South America from Sterling Luxury Holdings. That subsidiary, which generates 40% of our total revenue, is now part of my new company." Natasha watched his face turn gray. "I have also terminated all manufacturing contracts between Sterling Luxury Holdings and my personal partners in Italy, France, and Switzerland." "You can't do this," Adrian whispered, but his protest lacked conviction. "I can and I have. Those contracts were always in my name, not the company's name. My mistake was letting you benefit from my relationships for so long." Natasha stood up and walked around her desk, her heels clicking against the marble floor. "But the best part is yet to come. You see, Adrian, while you were planning my corporate funeral, you forgot something very important." She leaned against the edge of her desk, looking down at the man who had shared her bed while plotting her destruction. "I own the patents for the leather treatment process that makes Sterling products unique. Without my technology, you're just another overpriced handbag company." Adrian's hands were shaking as he reached for the photographs. "Natasha, please. We can work this out. Whatever you think you know. I know everything." Natasha's voice cut through his desperate words like ice. "I know that you've been transferring company funds to your personal accounts. I know that you told Bethany I was basically retired and wouldn't be a problem. I know that you planned to convince Harrison Capital to force me out of my own company." She pulled out her phone and played a recording of Adrian's voice from their penthouse. "She can take whatever settlement the lawyers give her and disappear." Adrian's face crumpled as he heard his own words condemning him. "You were recording us?" "I was protecting myself. Something I should have started doing years ago." Natasha returned to her chair, maintaining the distance between them. "You want to know what else I know? I know that Bethany has done this before. 3 other companies, 3 other married executives. You're just her latest mark." "That's not true. Bethany loves me." Natasha almost felt sorry for him. "Almost. Bethany loves your money. Just like she loved the money from her previous targets. Did she tell you about the text she sent to her friend? The ones where she called you the old man, and said she was set for life once she married you?" The color drained completely from Adrian's face. "You're lying. Michael Patterson is very thorough. Would you like to see the screenshots?" Adrian slumped forward in his chair, the reality of his situation finally penetrating his arrogance. "What do you want?" "I want you to understand that the game is over. Sterling Luxury Holdings will survive, but not with you in control." Natasha opened another folder. "These are divorce papers. You'll sign them today and you'll accept the settlement my lawyers have prepared." "What settlement?" "You keep your 40% of what's left of Sterling Luxury Holdings after I withdraw my assets. That should be worth about $10 million, assuming you can rebuild the manufacturing relationships and develop new technology to replace my patents." Natasha's smile was sharp as a blade. "You also get the penthouse, since I have no desire to live in a place you've contaminated with your betrayal." Adrian's voice broke. 40% of what's left isn't enough to keep the company running. Without your subsidiaries, without the manufacturing contracts. You should have thought of that before you decided to steal from me. This will destroy everything we built together." "No, Adrian. This will destroy everything you tried to steal from me. What I built will survive and thrive just without you." Natasha pressed her intercom button. "Jennifer, please come in." Jennifer Walsh entered with a briefcase and a notary public. "Good morning, Mr. Sterling. We have some documents for you to sign." "I won't sign anything," Adrian said, but his protest sounded hollow. "That's your choice," Natasha replied calmly. But if you don't sign the divorce agreement today, I'll file for divorce in court with full disclosure of your affair, your financial misconduct, and your attempted corporate theft. The media coverage should be interesting for a luxury brand CEO. Adrian looked around the office, his eyes taking in the awards, the photographs, the evidence of 15 years of success. All of it was slipping away because of his own greed and arrogance. If I sign this, what happens to Bethany? That's not my problem. But I imagine she'll lose interest quickly once she realizes you're no longer a billionaire. Adrian picked up the pen with trembling fingers. As he signed his name on document after document, Natasha felt a strange sense of peace settle over her. This wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning of a new chapter. There's one more thing, Natasha said as Adrian signed the final page. I want you out of this building by the end of the day. Security will escort you to clear out your office. Adrian looked up at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of disbelief and defeat. 15 years, Natasha. Doesn't that mean anything to you? It meant everything to me. That's why your betrayal is unforgivable. As Adrian left her office, shoulders slumped in defeat, Natasha turned to look out at the city she had conquered once before. In 6 months she would conquer it again, but this time she would build something that belonged entirely to her. Her phone buzzed with a text from Roberto. The first production samples are ready. They're magnificent. Natasha smiled, feeling truly happy for the first time in months. The future was beginning and it was going to be extraordinary. The news spread through Sterling Luxury Holdings like wildfire. By noon, every employee knew that Adrian Sterling was no longer with the company, though the official statement simply mentioned, pursuing new opportunities. By 2 p.m., the industry trade publications were buzzing with speculation about the sudden leadership change at one of the most successful luxury brands in North America. Natasha stood in the conference room, addressing the senior management team with the same calm authority she had brought to every crisis over the past 15 years. But this time, she wasn't managing a crisis, she was orchestrating a controlled demolition. I know you all have questions about the recent changes, she began, her voice carrying easily across the mahogany table. Let me be clear about what's happening and what it means for each of you. Richard Chin, the head of operations, raised his hand tentatively. Natasha, the manufacturing team is confused about the contract changes. Our partners in Italy aren't returning calls. That's because those contracts have been transferred to my new company, NS Luxury Holdings. Everyone in this room will receive an offer to join the new organization at their current salary plus a 20% increase. The room erupted in surprised murmurs. Margaret Foster, the chief financial officer, leaned forward. What about Sterling Luxury Holdings? What happens to this company? Sterling Luxury Holdings will continue to operate, but under new management and with a significantly different structure. Natasha pulled up a presentation on the wall screen. Without the South American subsidiary, the European manufacturing partnerships, and the proprietary technology licenses, this company will need to completely rebuild its operational foundation. James Morrison, the marketing director, looked stunned. Are you saying we're starting over? I'm saying that everyone in this room has a choice. You can stay with Sterling Luxury Holdings and help rebuild from the ground up, or you can join me in creating something entirely new. Natasha clicked to the next slide, showing revenue projections for NS Luxury Holdings. My new company already has confirmed manufacturing partnerships, established distribution channels, and revolutionary technology that no competitor can replicate. The numbers on the screen were staggering. Conservative projections showed NS Luxury Holdings reaching $100 million in revenue within 18 months. When do you need our decisions? Asked Susan Park, the head of design. Today. I'm moving fast and I need a team that's ready to move with me. Natasha looked around the table at faces she had worked with for years. I won't pretend this isn't disruptive. But sometimes disruption is necessary to achieve something extraordinary. Over the next 4 hours, 12 of Sterling Luxury Holdings' 14 senior executives chose to join Natasha's new company. The only holdouts were 2 managers who had been recently hired by Adrian and who, Natasha suspected, might have been complicit in his schemes. By 6 p.m., Natasha was alone in her former office, packing the personal items that would move with her to NS Luxury Holdings' new headquarters. Her phone rang constantly, reporters, competitors, and industry analysts all trying to understand what was happening to one of the most stable luxury brands in the market. She ignored them all until she saw Roberto's number on the caller ID. Roberto, how are the samples looking? Natasha, they are perfection. But I am hearing strange rumors about Sterling Luxury Holdings. Some of my contacts say Adrian Sterling is no longer with the company. The rumors are true. Adrian and I have decided to pursue separate business interests. Roberto was quiet for a moment. And our agreement for NS Luxury Holdings? Completely unchanged. In fact, I'd like to accelerate our timeline. Can we have the first production run ready in 6 weeks instead of 12? For you? We will make it happen. As Natasha hung up, her assistant knocked on the door. Mrs. Sterling? There's someone here to see you. She says it's urgent. Bethany Rodriguez stood in the doorway, her usual confident demeanor replaced by barely controlled panic. Her designer dress was wrinkled, her makeup smudged, and her hands shook as she clutched an expensive handbag. Natasha, we need to talk. No, we don't. Natasha continued packing, not bothering to look up. Please. Just 5 minutes. I know you must hate me, but I don't hate you, Bethany. I don't think about you at all. Natasha finally looked up, her expression neutral. You were a symptom, not the disease. Adrian made his choices, and now he's living with the consequences. He's completely broken. He won't get out of bed, won't eat, won't take my calls. Bethany stepped into the office uninvited. This isn't what I wanted. I never meant for things to go this far. What exactly did you think would happen? That I would quietly disappear so you could play house with my husband in the empire I built? Bethany's composure cracked. I thought he was telling the truth about you being ready to retire. He said you weren't interested in the business anymore. Adrian told you what you wanted to hear. Just like he told me what I wanted to hear for 15 years. Natasha closed her briefcase with a sharp click. The difference is, I was actually building something while I believed his lies. You were just planning to benefit from someone else's work. I can fix this, Bethany said desperately. I can leave, disappear. You and Adrian can work things out. Bethany, listen very carefully. My marriage to Adrian is over. Sterling Luxury Holdings as he knew it is over. And your little fantasy about becoming a billionaire's wife is over. Natasha stood up, her presence filling the room. The only question now is what you do with the rest of your life. I don't understand. Adrian is no longer a billionaire. His company is worth a fraction of what it was this morning, and it's going to get worse before it gets better. If you really love him, you'll stay and help him rebuild. If you were just after his money? Natasha shrugged. Well, I think we both know the answer to that. Bethany's face went pale as the full implications hit her. You destroyed him. I protected myself. Adrian destroyed himself the moment he decided to betray the woman who made his success possible. As Bethany fled the office, Natasha felt a sense of completion. The old chapter of her life was officially closed. Tomorrow she would begin writing a new one. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer Walsh. NS Luxury Holdings is officially incorporated. You're the CEO of your own empire again. Natasha looked around the empty office one last time, then turned off the lights and walked away. She had built Sterling Luxury Holdings from nothing once before. Building NS Luxury Holdings was going to be even more satisfying, because this time she was building it for herself alone. 3 months later, Natasha sat in her new corner office overlooking the Potomac River, reading industry reports with deep satisfaction. The headlines told the story she had orchestrated with surgical precision. Sterling Luxury Holdings stock plummets as manufacturing partners withdraw. Industry giant struggles to replace proprietary technology. Former employees' exodus continues as competitors poach top talent. Her intercom buzzed. Miss Sterling? Michael Patterson is here with his monthly report. Send him in. Michael entered with his usual professional demeanor, but Natasha caught the hint of amusement in his eyes. You'll want to hear this, he said, settling into the chair across from her desk. Good news or bad news? Depends on your perspective. Adrian's world is collapsing faster than we anticipated. Michael opened his tablet and began reading from his surveillance notes. Sterling Luxury Holdings lost another major client this week. The Meridian Hotel chain canceled their contract and signed with one of your competitors. That brings their total client loss to 60%. And Adrian's personal situation? He's living in a 2-bedroom apartment in Bethesda. The penthouse was sold to cover company debts. Michael's expression was neutral, but Natasha detected a note of satisfaction. Bethany Rodriguez left him 6 weeks ago. Apparently, she found a new gentleman friend, a pharmaceutical executive with better financial prospects. Natasha felt no sympathy for either of them. What about his attempts to rebuild the company? He hired a new manufacturing partner in Vietnam, but the quality is inconsistent. 3 major orders had to be returned due to defects. Michael scrolled through his notes. He also tried to develop a replacement for your leather treatment process. The results have been unsuccessful. How unsuccessful? The fashion press is calling his new products aggressively mediocre. One reviewer wrote that Sterling Luxury Holdings handbags now have all the prestige of airport gift shop merchandise. Natasha couldn't suppress a smile. Adrian had always been better at marketing than innovation. Without her technology and manufacturing relationships, he was essentially selling overpriced accessories with no distinctive features. There's more, Michael continued. Adrian tried to approach Harrison Capital again, hoping they would still be interested in investing. They declined. Apparently, buying into a failing luxury brand isn't attractive when the founder's wife has just launched a superior competitor. Speaking of which, how is our industry standing? Michael's expression brightened. NS Luxury Holdings is being called the most exciting launch in the luxury goods sector in 20 years. Your waiting list for new products is 8 months long, and you haven't even officially opened retail sales yet. That was true. Natasha had spent the past 3 months building her new empire with the same methodical precision she had brought to the original Sterling Luxury Holdings. But this time, every decision was hers alone. Roberto's workshops in Italy were producing handbags and accessories that looked like works of art. Her new leather treatment process created surfaces that seemed to glow with inner light, shifting colors subtly as they moved. Fashion editors were calling them revolutionary and the future of luxury craft. What about our launch event next week? Completely sold out. The waiting list for invitations is longer than most companies' customer lists. Michael closed his tablet. You've created something extraordinary, Miss Sterling. After Michael left, Natasha walked to her window and looked down at the bustling streets of Georgetown. In the distance, she could see the Sterling Luxury Holdings building, where Adrian was probably struggling to keep his diminished company afloat. Her phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. The caller ID showed Adrian's number, the first time he had tried to contact her since signing the divorce papers. She almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Hello, Adrian. His voice was hoarse, defeated. Natasha. Thank you for taking my call. What do you want? I wanted to apologize. For everything. I know it doesn't matter now, but I needed you to know that I realize what I threw away. Natasha felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no sympathy. Adrian Sterling was simply irrelevant to her life now. Is that all? I heard about your new company. About how successful it's already becoming. His voice cracked slightly. I'm proud of you. I know I have no right to say that, but... You're right. You have no right. Natasha, I know I can't undo what I did. But maybe we could find a way to work together again? Your new company and what's left of Sterling Luxury Holdings? We were a good team once. The audacity was breathtaking. Even now, facing the ruins of everything he had tried to steal, Adrian was still trying to benefit from her success. Adrian, let me be very clear. You and I will never work together again. You will never be part of my life again. What you built with my technology and my relationships is failing because you never understood that the foundation belonged to me. I know I made mistakes. You made choices. And now you're living with the consequences. Natasha's voice was ice cold. Don't call me again. She hung up and immediately blocked his number. That conversation was the final period on the sentence of their relationship. Her assistant's voice came through the intercom. Miss Sterling? Roberto Martinelli is here for your 4 o'clock meeting. Send him in. Roberto entered with a leather portfolio and the broad smile of a man who loved his work. Natasha, I bring you the first production samples for the evening collection. They are magnificent. As Roberto spread the new handbags across her conference table, Natasha felt the deep satisfaction of creation. These weren't just accessories, they were innovations that would set new standards for the entire industry. When can we begin full production? We are ready now. My craftsmen are excited to work with your new processes. They say it is like learning magic. Natasha picked up one of the handbags, feeling the smooth surface that seemed to warm under her touch. This was what she had been building toward, not just success, but the creation of something entirely new. Adrian had wanted to steal her empire. Instead, he had forced her to build something better. The launch party for NS Luxury Holdings took place on a crisp December evening at the Kennedy Center, with the Washington Monument glittering in the distance like a beacon of ambition realized. Natasha stood at the entrance, greeting guests who represented the pinnacle of wealth, influence, and taste from 3 continents. She wore a dress of her own design, created using her revolutionary leather treatment process applied to the finest silk. The fabric seemed to shift from deep emerald to midnight blue as she moved, catching light like captured starfire. Every detail, from her jewelry to her shoes, showcased the innovation that had made NS Luxury Holdings the most anticipated luxury brand launch in decades. Natasha Sterling. She turned to see Catherine Liu approaching with the confident stride of someone who had just scored a major business victory. Catherine's boutiques across Asia had sold out their allocation of NS Luxury Holdings products within 6 hours of opening orders. Catherine, you look radiant. How are sales in Hong Kong? Incredible. We have a waiting list that stretches into next year. Catherine accepted a glass of champagne from a passing waiter. But more importantly, the quality is exceeding even our highest expectations. My customers are calling these pieces heirloom quality. That was always the goal. As they spoke, Natasha noticed Margaret Westbrook across the room, deep in conversation with James Morrison, the venture capitalist who had provided NS Luxury Holdings initial funding. Both were examining one of the signature handbags with the intense focus of people who understood they were witnessing something revolutionary. Ladies and gentlemen, the evening's host announced, please welcome the founder and CEO of NS Luxury Holdings, Natasha Sterling. The applause was thunderous as Natasha took the stage. Looking out at the audience, she saw fashion editors who had flown in from Paris, Milan, and Tokyo. She saw celebrities who had waited months for early access to her products. She saw business leaders who wanted to understand how someone could rebuild an empire in less than a year. Thank you all for being here tonight, Natasha began, her voice carrying easily across the room. When I started this journey, I had a simple vision: to create luxury goods that would be treasured for generations. Not just because they're beautiful, but because they represent a new standard of innovation and craftsmanship. She gestured to the displays around the room, where her products were showcased like fine art. Every piece you see tonight was created using proprietary processes that took 15 years to develop. These aren't just handbags and accessories, they're the future of luxury goods. The audience was completely silent, hanging on every word. But more than that, NS Luxury Holdings represents something I believe in deeply. The idea that true success comes from building something extraordinary, not from taking what someone else has created. Several people in the audience nodded knowingly. The fashion industry was small, and everyone knew the story of Natasha's separation from Sterling Luxury Holdings, though few knew the complete details. Tonight, I'm announcing our expansion into 3 new product categories: luxury jewelry, premium leather furniture, and custom automotive interiors. The audience stirred with excitement. We're also opening flagship boutiques in Paris, Milan, Tokyo, and New York, all within the next 6 months. The applause was deafening. What Natasha had just announced represented a billion-dollar expansion plan, the kind of aggressive growth that usually took established companies decades to achieve. After her speech, Natasha was surrounded by admirers, competitors, and potential partners. But the conversation that mattered most came from an unexpected source. Miss Sterling? She turned to see a young woman, perhaps 25, with the confident bearing of someone who had earned her success rather than inherited it. I'm Elena Rodriguez. I'm a business reporter for Forbes. Of course. I read your article about emerging luxury brands. Very insightful. Thank you. I was wondering if I could ask you something off the record. Natasha studied the young woman's face, seeing genuine curiosity rather than the predatory interest of a scandal-seeking journalist. What would you like to know? How does it feel to rebuild an empire while watching your former partner's company collapse? It was a direct question but not hostile. Elena was asking about the human element of a business story that had captivated the industry. It feels like justice, Natasha replied honestly. Not revenge justice. When someone tries to steal what you've built, the appropriate response is to build something better. Do you ever regret how things ended with Sterling Luxury Holdings? I regret trusting the wrong person for so long. But I don't regret protecting what was mine. Elena nodded, making notes. One last question. What advice would you give to women who find themselves in similar situations, professionally or personally betrayed by someone they trusted? Natasha considered the question carefully. Remember that your worth isn't determined by someone else's opinion of you. If someone doesn't value what you bring to the table, build your own table. As the evening wound down, Natasha found herself on the Kennedy Center's terrace, looking out at the city lights. Washington spread before her like a circuit board of ambition, each light representing someone's dreams and struggles. Her phone buzzed with a text from Roberto. The Milan workshop is ready for the furniture collection. When do we begin? Another text came from Catherine. Tokyo wants to double their order for spring. Can we manage production? A third message was from Jennifer Walsh. The patent applications for your new jewelry processes have been approved. You now own the exclusive rights to 17 revolutionary manufacturing techniques. Natasha smiled, feeling a deep sense of completion. 6 months ago, she had been a woman whose life was crumbling around her. Tonight, she was the CEO of the most innovative luxury company in the world, with a pipeline of opportunities that stretched years into the future. She had rebuilt her empire, but this time it was built on a foundation that belonged entirely to her. In the distance, she could see the Sterling Luxury Holdings building, dark except for a few scattered windows. Adrian was probably working late, desperately trying to save what remained of his company. Natasha felt no satisfaction in his failure, but she felt immense pride in her own success. The rise was complete. Now came the truly exciting part, building something that would last forever. 1 year later, Natasha stood on the balcony of her new penthouse, watching the sunrise paint the Potomac River in shades of gold and crimson. The Washington Post lay folded on her glass table, its business section featuring a full-page article titled, "The Sterling Success Story: How One Woman Built a Billion-Dollar Empire in 18 Months." The article included photographs of her flagship boutiques in 5 major cities, each one packed with customers willing to wait months for products that had redefined luxury. It detailed the unprecedented success of NS Luxury Holdings, which had captured 30% of the ultra-high-end luxury market in less than 2 years. But the most satisfying paragraph was buried near the end. Industry analysts note that former competitor Sterling Luxury Holdings has struggled to maintain market share, losing an estimated 80% of its value since the departure of co-founder Natasha Sterling. Current CEO Adrian Sterling declined to comment for this article. Natasha set down her coffee and checked her phone. 3 missed calls from Roberto, 2 from Catherine, and a text from Margaret Westbrook about expanding their hotel partnership to include custom furniture for an entire chain of luxury resorts. Her phone rang as she was reviewing the messages. "Miss Sterling? This is Elena Rodriguez from Forbes. I hope I'm not calling too early." "Not at all, Elena. How can I help you?" "I'm working on a follow-up piece to last year's article about your company launch. I was hoping we could discuss some recent developments." "Such as?" "Well, there are rumors that you're considering going public. And there's speculation about a possible acquisition offer from LVMH." Natasha smiled. The luxury conglomerate had indeed approached her through intermediaries, offering to buy NS Luxury Holdings for an astronomical sum. She had politely declined, preferring to maintain control of her creation. "I'm always open to strategic partnerships," Natasha replied diplomatically. "But NS Luxury Holdings isn't for sale. I'm building something for the long term." "There's also been speculation about your personal life. Sources say you've been seen frequently with Dr. Marcus Thompson, the humanitarian surgeon. Any comments?" Natasha's smile widened. Marcus was everything Adrian had never been: intellectually curious, genuinely caring, and completely uninterested in her wealth except as a tool for funding the medical clinics he established in underserved communities. Their relationship had developed slowly, built on respect and shared values rather than business convenience. "Dr. Thompson and I are good friends," she said, which was technically true, though it significantly understated the depth of their connection. After ending the call with Elena, Natasha dressed for her most important meeting of the day. She chose a navy suit from her own collection, paired with a handbag that had a 6-month waiting list and shoes that fashion magazines called architectural marvels. The meeting was at the offices of Sterling Luxury Holdings. Natasha arrived at 10 a.m. sharp, noting how different the building felt from her memories. The lobby, once bustling with activity, now seemed half empty. The receptionist, a young man she didn't recognize, looked surprised when she announced herself. "Miss Sterling to see Mr. Sterling. He's expecting me." The elevator ride to the executive floor felt like traveling backward through time. Everything looked the same but smaller somehow, diminished by the company's reduced circumstances. Adrian's secretary, also unfamiliar, led her to his office. The space that had once radiated power and success now felt desperate. The awards and photographs were still there, but they seemed like museum pieces from a more successful era. Adrian stood when she entered, and Natasha was shocked by how much he had aged. His hair was completely gray now, his face lined with stress, his expensive suit unable to hide the weight he had lost. He looked like a man who had been fighting a losing battle for too long. "Natasha, thank you for coming. Your message said it was urgent. Please sit down." Adrian gestured to the conference table where they had planned so many strategies in happier times. "Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water?" "I'm fine. What do you want, Adrian? He took a deep breath, gathering courage for whatever he was about to say. I want to make you an offer. I'm listening. I want to sell you Sterling Luxury Holdings. Everything. The name, the remaining contracts, the client list, all of it. Natasha kept her expression neutral, though internally she was fascinated by the irony. The man who had tried to steal her empire was now offering to sell her the ruins of what he had destroyed. What's your asking price? $5 million. It was a fraction of what Sterling Luxury Holdings had been worth at its peak, and probably more than it was worth now. Adrian was essentially asking her to buy the privilege of putting his company out of its misery. Why would I want to buy a failing company with a damaged reputation? Adrian's composure cracked slightly. Because you built it? Because it was yours before it was mine? Because... His voice dropped to a whisper. Because I destroyed something beautiful, and maybe you can make it beautiful again. Natasha studied his face, seeing genuine remorse for perhaps the first time since their marriage ended. But remorse didn't change the fundamental calculus of business. Adrian, I don't need Sterling Luxury Holdings. I have something better. I know. I've seen what you've built. It's magnificent. He looked down at his hands. But this company still carries your legacy. The early designs, the innovations that started everything, they're all still here. Buried under years of poor decisions. Yes, but you could restore them. You could honor what we created together before I... He couldn't finish the sentence. Natasha was quiet for a long moment, considering the offer from multiple angles. Buying Sterling Luxury Holdings would eliminate a competitor, though not a particularly effective one. It would give her access to some historical designs and client relationships. But more than that, it would allow her to close the circle on this chapter of her life completely. I'll buy it, she said finally. Adrian's relief was palpable. Thank you. I know it's not much, but I'm not buying it for $5 million. His face fell. What price did you have in mind? $1. Adrian blinked in confusion. I don't understand. Sterling Luxury Holdings is worth exactly $1 to me. It has no valuable assets, no profitable operations, and a reputation that would take years to rebuild. Natasha stood up. But I'll pay you $1 for the privilege of shutting it down permanently. The blood drained from Adrian's face as he realized what she was offering. You want to destroy it? I want to put it out of its misery. The Sterling name deserves better than what you've turned it into. Natasha, please. There are still 40 employees. People who depend on this company. I'll offer jobs to anyone who wants them at NS Luxury Holdings. At higher salaries than they're making here. Natasha moved toward the door. But Sterling Luxury Holdings ends today. What about me? Natasha paused with her hand on the door handle. What about you? What am I supposed to do? For the first time since entering his office, Natasha felt a flash of genuine emotion. Not sympathy exactly, but a recognition of shared humanity. You're intelligent, Adrian. You're experienced. You're still relatively young. She turned to face him. Build something new. Something that's actually yours this time. I don't know how to start over. I do. I've done it twice now. Natasha opened the door. The difference is, when I start over, I build something that lasts. As she walked toward the elevator, Natasha heard Adrian call her name one last time. Natasha? I really did love you. That part was real. She stopped but didn't turn around. I know. That's what made everything else so much worse. The elevator doors closed, and Natasha descended from the ruins of her old life into the bright promise of her future. By noon, the legal papers would be signed, and Sterling Luxury Holdings would officially become part of NS Luxury Holdings. By evening, the Sterling name would be retired forever, with dignity restored. That night, Natasha had dinner with Marcus at their favorite restaurant in Georgetown. He listened as she described the day's events, his dark eyes reflecting understanding and support. How do you feel? He asked as they shared dessert. Complete, Natasha replied. For the first time in years, I feel complete. Marcus reached across the table and took her hand. What's next? Natasha smiled, thinking of the opportunities that stretched ahead. Everything. We're going to build something extraordinary. The victory was total, but more importantly, it was just the beginning.